All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the the formerly known as MFC Approach podcast, but I'm gonna change the name to the Fit Father Code podcast, starting with this one right here. So, anyways, same podcast, new name, a little bit different direction, I guess. With I don't know, I guess the audience that I'm trying to target there, but more or less, it's going to be a lot of the same. So back for his third time, though, on the show, Jeff Hoehn, man, welcome back, dude. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, man. Yeah, a little rebrand. So first of the rebrand here. I've been on the MFC podcast two times. The first time on the Fit Father Code, though.
You'll have to let me know how different your experience is with the name change.
Hey, it's the same host, same good host. So I'm sure nothing's going to be crazy there, but yeah.
I appreciate that, man. And just for those listening, I do sound like crap, and Jeff informed me of that as soon as we got on the call today. I do sound like crap, kind of battling a cold right now, but it's that time of year, right? We're early December, and with the change of the season comes all these different bugs and viruses. So anyways.
Hey, you're fighting through, man. That's all that matters. You're showing up even when it's not perfect. So
That's right. Well, dude, had you on a few times to the show, and I mean, it's been a little bit since you and I have sat down and chatted, but wanted to just get a life update, dude. How's things going? I mean, one of the big things we're going to talk about today is just your experience with being a dad now for over a year, and how that's affected, I mean, I guess different areas of your life, but more specifically, like your health and your fitness and stuff like that. But yeah, man, how's things? Give us a little update.
Yeah, dude. Again, it's good to be on here, man. I always love chatting with you and everything. Whenever you ask me, I'm like, oh hell yeah, I'd love to come back on. But yeah, I mean, nothing. I think we chatted. I feel like I was on last time, maybe in like sometime in the summer. So nothing crazy has really happened. I'm a pretty boring dude, honestly, right? Like I love my days of waking up, learning a little bit more about health and fitness, doing some breath work, reading a little bit, and then doing work, and then hanging out with the fam, and throwing in maybe some blues hockey, some hockey in there as well too, watching some of that and some trash TV with my wife. But that's kind of my days most of the time, right? So we haven't done anything crazy. I mean, we traveled to North Carolina. I went to like a seminar, with other coaches and stuff. And those are always fun to meet up with other coaches in the industry. Awesome. And I always feel really good there, right? I guess that is one change for me, is that event just made me realize that like I'm my own bottleneck when it comes to things, right? And like I felt like maybe I got, you get through your day to day. I'm a very routine based person. And so I felt like maybe I just started to kind of get too routine based and just kind of went through the motions and maybe became less intentional with what I was doing. And, like, for example, I was like, just how I show up from day to day, right? In terms of just trying to just like, for one, like make sure that I'm like, not always just showing up in sweatpants, like dressing a little bit nicer for work and stuff, right? So I got a flannel. I was doing the not wearing a hat for a little while and making my hair look nice, but then I'm like, so I go back to my hat, because sometimes that can be easier and I get really bad like bedhead and stuff. But just being a bit more intentional overall, and just feeling like I can level up myself in terms of what I do from day to day, and just continuing to hold myself to higher standards and things, right? I just felt like that was slacking. So it was good from that perspective. And anytime I can go meet, when we work online in a virtual space, which I know you started to work in a gym, so you can probably relate to this, but can sometimes get like, we can have conversations through the camera and stuff, and these are great. I love having these conversations, but sometimes it is nice to just have that like human, one-to-one, see what other people that you are doing the same thing as you were doing, and just how you can, again, just be around more people and hold yourself to a higher standard, right? So like that was a big kind of thing that happened back in October. There, I just felt like I needed to raise my standards a little bit with things, and even how I show up as a dad too, right? Because I also, this was kind of what we wanted to tie in, but Colby's now getting to that age where like I'm starting to notice he, will mimic some things that you do a little bit already, right? And so it's like, dang, like I gotta like start to watch what I say. I gotta start to watch how I act and stuff, and that was like again, kind of been a big kind of light bulb moment. But other than that, dude, just continuing to stay consistent with training and nutrition, right? It's like, for me, yes, it is a aesthetic driven thing and a performance driven thing, but at the end of the day, it is like part of my lifestyle. And I do know that if I like, it is a long-term health thing as well too. So like for me, it is just, hey, this is what I do, and I find a way to get it in. So continuing to stay up with that, just same thing there. I think probably just continuing to make sure I'm staying intentional with my training and nutrition, right? Because that's another thing that, because it is such a habit for me now, I feel like it can just become less intentional if you let it. And so just staying up with that. And then, yeah, dude, just staying up with the business and just trying to continue to learn and grow and be the best coach I can, right? Like, again, sometimes I can get caught up in like, wanting to continue to build my business and like, do I need to do more on social media? Do I need to put out better content? And then sometimes I can forget to be like, hey, at the end of the day, this is a results driven business. So it's like, anytime I get to that point, it's like, okay, what action can I take to help my clients today and to help my clients become better and to get results? Because that ultimately is what's going to drive the business, right? At the end of the day. So yeah, just a few things on my end, nothing crazy, life changing or anything like that. Just kind of more the norm, and just a few things that, I feel like I've had to just question for myself and, just keep trying to get better, man.
Well, I love that, dude. I love the reflection there, and just some of the things that you pointed out. Like, that's one thing I learned from my time with working with you, Jeff, was like, you definitely are a creature of habit, and like, you just have your daily routine, man, and like, you knock it out every single day, and even more so like a weekly routine, and monthly routine in some cases as well. But yeah, dude, like the creature of habit sort of mindset. It's funny because I feel like in some ways that's such a beneficial thing and can be such a good thing. And then in other ways, yeah, you kind of become stagnant and don't progress or develop in certain ways that you maybe could if you did mix it up a little bit or were a little bit more intentional. And so just some of those things you mentioned, man, I wanted to highlight that because I thought that was such a insightful thought there. It's so easy to just get in a routine and just go day to day and do the same thing every single day, and just show up, which again, a lot of times is what you got to do. But at a certain point too, there's got to be a little more intentionality there. So even though you made the effort to put a flannel on today, but I mean, you do have a little bit of spit up or something on your shirt there. I love to see that, but obviously being a dad, that's awesome, dude. So anyways, I wanted to highlight that though. And I think that's awesome because it's funny. I'm maybe a little, well, not necessarily the opposite. I'm like, I definitely struggle with like the day to day getting the things done that I need to every single day and having a good routine. And that's something that I always, even when we were working together, man, like that was something that I needed to focus on more. And sitting here talking to you again, it's like, that's definitely something I need to focus on more. So it's just interesting to take our two experiences, our two situations. I need to be more of a creature of habit, and it seems like you're trying to maybe flip that on its head just a little bit.
Yeah, dude. Well, it's like I think with anything in life, it's like certain things are good up until a point, right? And a strength can end up becoming a weakness if you let it go too far. And I think this is to bring this back to a body composition, health, fitness thing. It's like kind of the same thing with health and fitness, right? Like people will say, hey, you need to do this, or you need to do it this way. But it's also like, okay, what are you currently doing, and who are you as a person, and what is your, if it's a body composition thing, what is your unique physiology? What does that say, right? And it's like, if you've been someone who's always fat loss dieted, you probably need to eat enough calories, right? And like there's certain things that you need to do there, right? So I think it's the same thing where it just kind of depends on where you're at. But any sort of like strength, I feel like if you go too far with it can become, a weakness, and it can hinder you a little bit. But I think also it's important to know, okay, what do you respond to best and what's best for you, right? So it's like the same thing where for you like to have a little bit more spontaneity in your day and maybe not necessarily be a creature of habit all the time. But again, like you said, maybe a little bit of habit-based things would really benefit you in a routine base, right? To a point where you don't want to box yourself into where everything needs to be, to the minute or whatever. And then for me, it's a little bit of the opposite. I probably need to have a little bit more spontaneity in my day and change things up a little bit because, like I said, becoming habit-based, you can eventually get to the point where you do just kind of like not necessarily go through the motions, but like we talked about intentionality, you can be a little less intentional with what you're doing. So yeah.
Yeah, man, for sure. I was gonna expand on that just a little bit more. I mean, you mentioned training though, and like body composition and stuff. It's really interesting to me because I know and I don't know, maybe I'll let you clarify this
Yep.
for us. When it comes to like training and stuff, Jeff, would you say you're more of a science-based guy, or would you say you're more of like one of those bro lifters who's just like, just get in there and freaking work hard and do what you're doing, you know?
Well, I feel like this is something that's evolved over time. When I first got into training, it was more just like probably bro based, just do it, get the pump, do whatever, right? There wasn't really any method to the madness or anything like that. And then I definitely transitioned more to very science based, and everything was like, hey, what does the research kind of say? Hey, this is what the research says. Like, anything off of that, probably it's like, well, it's not backed up by the research. And now I feel like I've gotten to this point where I've been able to bridge the gap between the two better, where it's like, use science for what it is to give you an idea of where to go, but understand that science itself, if we look at the actual research, is, it's limited in terms of what you can do, especially with what we're trying to do, whether it be from a nutrition body comp standpoint or like a training perspective, right? Like you take like a training study, it's like most of those, like you have to see, okay, is it done in a trained population? Is it done in not trained population? When you call somebody a trained population, what the hell does that even mean? And then you're also constrained by just the time frame of some of the studies and obviously the methods that they use. Things just aren't going to be perfect. So it's like it gives you an idea, but then even when you look at these studies and they take it based off the average of the results of things, right? And so when you have a lot of different people, you're going to have some people that respond better to certain things, some people respond not as good, right? But that doesn't really get published. It's again going to be the average. And then that's another thing too. A lot of the exercise science research and things around hypertrophy and strength and stuff, the sample size is fairly low as well too. So it's hard to get like a larger population. It's just super expensive and things like that. So research gives us an idea. And so like I feel like I've been able to, and this could just come from experience and working with clients for a longer period of time now, but just being more open to using the bro science and what's worked for people, but then also using the research and kind of combining the two and not getting caught up on one side or the other. And right. So to me, it's more of a blend now. I definitely use science and like, I love nerding out over that stuff and reading it, but I feel like I just have a better understanding of what it can tell us and what it can't tell us. And then same thing with nutrition too, right? On the flip side with nutrition, again, same thing there. It's like, if you do like a observational type study or like an epidemiology study where it's going to be like hundreds and like thousands of people, you're not really getting the full data on all that. And so there's just going to be some, and then same thing, you'll have people that respond well to certain protocols and interventions and some people that don't. And so like now I just really try to, like when I'm working with a client or myself, just really try to understand the person, what they have done in the past and where they're currently at. And then that's where I can use science and my experience to be like, hey, this is where I think we need to start. And then from there, just base it off of, how they respond and how their body responds. Right. And that will be the thing that guides our decision-making, within the constraints of like, this is kind of what the science says. So again, it's blending the two. Long story to say that, I like to blend the two and base it off of the person as well. Right. Just like we talked about, what's best, being more habit-based or routine-based or having more spontaneity? Well, I think it depends on the person. Right. So same kind of concept there with the body composition and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's interesting because I feel like in my view of things, I feel like science-based lifting was like really big for a while. And I feel like everybody was just so focused on the science and the research and stuff. Even people that maybe weren't as like knowledgeable or able to interpret the research was just like so science-based. Everything had to be so science-based. And I feel like, again, there's a lot of nuance there that people don't understand. And like, I'm even one of those. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I know that this study says this, but like, what are all of the different criteria that make this up, and how many people, like you said. And so it's just been really interesting because I feel like there's kind of been a swing in maybe a little bit of the other direction lately, at least with kind of the crowd that I'm around and involved with a little bit more. But it is obviously, yeah, the balance of the two, I think is really, really beneficial and helpful. And it's interesting that I've kind of gotten to that point too now where, yes, I want good form when I lift, and I want optimal form, and I want like the stretch and everything to be as optimal as it possibly can. But at the same time too, I've gotten to this point where I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to freaking grind it out and push hard. And if my form maybe suffers a little bit, then it suffers a little bit. I'm not going to be so worried about that. And I've really enjoyed my training since I've had that kind of click in my head, which I mean, somewhat recent. Hasn't been too long, honestly, that I've kind of experienced that. And so it's cool to hear you kind of talk about that too, because I definitely consider you, I mean, you're kind of the one that really pushed me into the science-based lifting and stuff. But even with you too, it was like the working hard and hitting the right, intensity levels and stuff like that was part of it as well. So,
well, and I think off of that, like, again, that's where, maybe it is a thing where like I don't think there's a right or wrong of, maybe for you, like you needed a little bit of time to go more like focused technique for a little bit. Right. And then now you have that skill now, and now you can go back to really grinding it out and pushing it, but you have a better skill now. Right. So again, I think that's where it's like, I don't think it ever necessarily has to be one or the other. It's just, and then figuring out what works for you. Like if you find that you're enjoying that training better, like that's an underrated thing when it comes to training that I think people overlook is like, I mean, what do you enjoy? Because if you enjoy it, you're going to be more likely to go and push yourself and actually go and do it. Right. And then on top of it, and I know you and I talked a lot about this, if that's the case and you feel like you're taking more of a kind of just going in, pushing it, grinding, like having good sessions, pushing hard, then my thing that I would want to look for on that is just, making sure you're recovering and things are going well from that standpoint. Right. Because, I think anybody has it in them to really go balls to the wall for any X amount of period of time, right? But obviously the longer we go with that, then we can run into some recovery issues. And then, I know we're going to talk about this today, but, being a parent, having other things outside of fitness, like those can weigh on your recovery. So, but if somebody's seeing results and they feel good training that way and they like it, it's like, I mean, ride that out, and then maybe you come to that fork in the road where now, okay, maybe Luke does need to go back to maybe a little bit more technique driven for a little bit and then go back, right? And you just kind of keep stacking that over time there. But again, as I said too, like it's a results driven industry. And so like, if you're seeing results, like that ultimately is what we're aiming for, is like, are you seeing results? How we get there? I feel like there's different ways we can get there. If you're feeling good and you're getting results and it doesn't feel like you're having to like, you're doing things that are unhealthy from like a mental standpoint for you, then, I think we're in a good spot. That's ultimately where we want to go.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest factors too is like, do you enjoy it? Right. Yeah. Do you enjoy it? And if you do, then you'll keep doing it. So I love that.
Well, and you just put more into it as well too, right? Like that's the thing. Like if you're not enjoying it, you're not going to push yourself as hard, and then you're not going to see as good of results, So
yeah, for sure. No, dude. Yeah. I appreciate kind of the segue there into, the fatherhood sort of thing. That's one of the big things I wanted to chat with you about today was just being a dad. Being a father and how that has affected your day-to-day, mostly with like your health and like your wellness and stuff, but also would love to just kind of dive a little deeper maybe into how it's affected your day-to-day with like your business and stuff, I can't remember for sure. I'm pretty sure your wife works too, doesn't she?
She works like maybe one day a week. So not really. Okay. It just depends on the week. Sometimes it's one. I would say on average it's one if you average it out. Maybe a half a day if you average it out.
Was it more before your son was born?
Before he was born, yes. She was working full time, right? Okay. So yeah. And then when he was born, we decided like, hey, we're in a spot to where she doesn't have to, and so it's like, okay, let's definitely lean into that because I want to, I mean that's a full-time job in itself, right? And just having Colby with his mom and like being able to be with her throughout the day. Like, I just feel like that's just, that's to me, I would rather do that. And then plus, I mean, obviously the cost of like babysitting is through the roof as well too. So it's like, you're almost like just, hey, go to work so we can pay the babysitting.
No, I totally hear you, man. And that's one thing me and my wife have always said is like, we want to be the ones to raise our boys, right? Not somebody else. And so the fact that you can do that, Allie can step away from her work a little bit more and be with Colby more. That's awesome. But so I guess as far as like your day-to-day with your business, maybe we can just touch on that quickly. Like, has becoming a dad affected your day-to-day as your business, or have you been able to keep a pretty good routine there?
Yeah, I think it's affected it in positive ways and maybe, in some ways that have been a bit more challenging. I don't want to say a negative way because I don't think any of it is negative. It's just, just different challenges you kind of have to work through and stuff like that. I would say in terms of my day-to-day routine, initially it definitely impacted it, right? Like, I could wake up and, you knew what you're going to get done for the day. It's like, you're just going to be able to work straight through and get those things done. Right. But obviously when he was first born, it was like, you don't know what the hell's going on. It's like, you're just kind of trying to work when you can. Right. But now I feel like
deprivation too, right?
Yeah. Now I feel like I've definitely been able to like get a more established routine. But, if I were to compare my routine now compared to what it was pre-Colby, it's still like not fully there, right? Like it's, I like to wake up in the morning and do some breath work and then do some like continuing education. And so now, Colby will wake up in the middle of that. So it's kind of like, and he wakes up around the same general time, but it's within like an hour and a half window, right? So you don't really know when that's going to happen. So I'm like, sometimes some things I want to get done in the morning, they can get impacted or interrupted basically. And then, anytime I feel like when you kind of get interrupted with some of those things like writing or like reading things, it kind of impacts your ability to like stay focused a little bit, right? So like that's been somewhat of a challenge there. Nothing huge throughout the day, again, because Allie and I know that, okay, like my job is to provide, her job is to take care of Colby. So it's like pretty much it doesn't impact my day-to-day, right? I do feel like I need to be a little bit more intentional with my work time and making sure I get done at a certain time so then I can get my workout in and then we can have dinner at a decent time so I can also spend some time with Colby, right? So I feel like from that standpoint, I've definitely felt like, hey, I need to get things done a bit quicker, which sometimes can be a good thing though too. I think it can force you to stay productive there. The other thing is because I work from home, this has probably been the biggest negative is it's just hard. Like you hear stuff going on and like, sometimes she needs stuff. And then if I want to go out and like go to the bathroom or get a drink, he wants to like kind of hang out for a minute. And then I feel like if she's like struggling out there, I'm like, oh crap. But it's like hard to, so like, it's a little bit more distracting from that standpoint. Right.
Yeah.
These are all minor things. Like they're not huge or anything like that, but those are routine things that have changed a little bit for me.
Yeah, and the acknowledgement of that I think is great. I love what you said too, though. None of it's negative, right? I mean, in some ways, yeah, like you may get interrupted or whatever, taken away for a minute, but at the same time too, dude, like when I get up and go to the bathroom and like my boys see me, like sometimes I'll try to be a little more sneaky about it, but when they see me, dude, it's like the best thing ever. It's like a nice little break from the desk. And I mean, being a dad, man, is like the best thing on earth. Like, I don't think there's anything better than that.
It really is.
And so I love those little interruptions, and, but I think just acknowledging the fact that they aren't like maybe interruptions and stuff. And that when you are sitting down at the desk, you do got to be a little more productive and a little more focused and work a little quicker, whatever it may be. I think it all is just a net positive in my mind. And so I love the fact that you mentioned all that and acknowledge that. So I guess let's focus more on like your workouts and stuff now, dude, like your fitness, your nutrition, and how you feel like that's affected you. Because I think, bottom line is, man, getting to the gym, like working out, prioritizing your nutrition, it all is just, I don't want to oversimplify this, but dude, it's a choice. It really is. And it's something that you have to prioritize if you want to fit it into your day to day. And I don't care if you have kids, if you don't have kids, like it's a choice you have to make. And speaking for myself, I think it was a lot easier for me to continue to make that decision once I did have kids because I was already making that decision, and I know how good it made me feel by making that decision on a daily basis. And I mean, we kind of met up, Jeff, not long after my twins were born. And that was a freaking circus, man. Like that was probably the time over the last 12 to 15 years of my fitness journey that I was probably at my lowest. And it was the hardest for me to get my workouts in just because, I mean, like when you have newborns, you don't sleep. And it's wild, dude. Even though my wife definitely took the brunt of that, there's only so much I can do when it comes to feeding a baby. So that was definitely one of the lowest times of my fitness journey. However, it was still something that I showed up and I chose to do most days of the week, you know, most of the time. I definitely missed some days in that period of time, but it was much easier for me to kind of get back on the wagon, especially once I did, you know, jump on board with you. It was kind of a good motivator for me to kind of get back at it. And so anyways, man, what I'm trying to get at here is what, I don't know. I guess I want to acknowledge first and foremost, like, it's not easy. It's hard. Yes, 100%. However, it is a choice you have to make, and it is a priority you have to make. And it's totally up to you as the individual. Coaches like Jeff and I think, like I just said, Jeff made it so much easier for me to kind of get back on board after my twins were born because I had that accountability. And so hiring a coach or somebody like us is a great option, you know, for somebody who maybe struggles with that a little bit more. And maybe hasn't made it a priority in the past. But I guess for you, Jeff, specifically, what effects did you notice? Was it harder for you to get your workouts in due to whatever, you know, due to sleep, due to time, due to whatever? And how did you make it work for yourself in those moments? And how are you making it work now that he's a little bit older? There's a little more stability there and structure.
Yeah. So I think, like you said, dude, it does end up being a choice. It can be like, for some people, depending on where you're at, like, it is going to be tough, and, you know, it's not easy, right? Like, if it was easy, everybody would do it. So it's not easy, like you said, but it is ultimately a choice. Like, so I'm glad you pointed that out. So for me, I think it started probably before we had Colby. Of like, I was like, hey, I'm going to get equipment for a home gym, right? I already know that. And dude, I think if I didn't do that, like, it would be a lot tougher, right? So, you know, so let's set the stage here with, I went and got stuff, right? I invested in gym equipment to have, which made that process a bit easier to continue to get my workouts in, right? I still would have found a way to get it in, but it would have probably been a little bit tougher. But I made sure that I was going to have stuff at home to where it's like, hey, that's not going to be an excuse, right? Like, me not be like, hey, I have to drive to the gym. That's going to take 30 minutes there and back, you know. Boom. I want to get that out of the way of that. That's not going to be excuse. So I did that first, right? I think that was the big thing. And same as you, like, for me, this has just been a part of my life, and this is what I do for a living, in a sense. So it's like, that is a huge driving motivator as well too, right? Like this is what I do for a living. Like, if I'm going to be speaking about these things, I need to do that. I can't not do that. Otherwise, it's like, I'm not going to feel good about it, and that's going to show in my content with my clients, right? So it's like, that is a huge driving factor for me to continue to do it. But again, as you said, I've built a habit too. So and I've based it off of, like, I know how I feel when I work out and when I don't, and I do not like the way I feel when I don't work out, and I just focus on how it makes me feel, right? Because trust me, there's been days where I definitely have not wanted to work out, you know, and having a gym in the garage where, and here in St. Louis, we have weather that is basically based on the season, right? So it's going to be super hot, and then it can get pretty cold. We have this like very short period of time where it's like, okay, it's like 70 degrees. This is freaking awesome. So, you know, you also have that where were many days where it was like 20 degrees out. I'm like, God, that's the last freaking thing I want to do. And then even when it's like 100 degrees out, it's like, man, it's like the last thing I want to do. So like that, like, I definitely had that. And then I think too, and I do want to hit on sleep, but I've been trying to explain this a lot more to clients. Like, when we are like sleep deprived, or we're under like a lot of like just stress on the body, or just psychological stress, when you're in the moment, you don't really realize how your brain is just making different choices, and you're almost in a completely different state. And you don't really notice that while you're in it until like way afterwards, right? Like, until you can kind of, if you reflect on things like that, you can kind of see. So, you know, what I'm getting at here with this is, it's hard to like realize that in the moment, and how, you know, you just kind of are like, well, why do I feel this way? I mean, I'm not as motivated to train. And it's like, dude, it's like, you just had a newborn. You're, you know, you have the stress of, you know, being the provider. You have the stress of managing a newborn, which again, my wife took literally most of that stress off of me, but you know, there's still that stress of that, stress of keeping up with clients, you know, and then any other things that you have going on. And then obviously you add in the sleep deprivation on top of it. Right. So it was definitely I was less motivated to train, but again, I always came back to, it was a habit, and I did this for a living, and I just focused on how it made me feel versus like, hey, I need to do this to maintain my muscle or to build more muscle, right? Or to have a certain look. So that definitely helped me there. One thing I wanted to hit on though is, one thing that I've noticed is definitely motivation is, in the last year, has definitely been a bit lower, probably for all the things I talked about. So like just pushing myself through a bit more, like I just discussed. Recovery does seem to just be a bit lower. Like I think back on maybe some of the volume and training I did, and I just right now in the stage of life I'm in, I feel like I definitely couldn't do it. I don't know if I've like learned to push each set a bit more, and so I get more out of less, or if it is just like a, hey, you have a higher stress baseline stress and like your recovery bucket's lower, and that's going to impact how motivated you are to really push training and what you can handle, right? So it could be that, but recovery just seems lower, like a little bit more like just general soreness, achy joints from time to time, right? So I do notice that. And so this brings me to sleep. That's probably one of the main things. You just have to be way more at least I do, and I think this is the case for everyone. You just have to be way more intentional with sleep and sleep habits and what you do from a sleep perspective, because I feel like at least the moment I let it slip, now I'm starting to get less sleep, and then that starts to impact you, whereas kind of what I was talking about, you don't really notice it in the moment. I don't know if this is the case for you, but one night of like not good sleep, feel fine. You start to string together a couple nights or a couple, 3 out of 5 nights of not good sleep. And that's where it really starts to like subconsciously kind of show up, and you don't really feel it, but you look back and you're like, okay, I'm definitely more fatigued, like more brain fog, I'm less motivated, type of situation, right? So just being more intentional with sleep, because this comes back to just how things maybe have changed from a routine standpoint. I want to, make sure I'm up before Colby's up. I just feel way better when I'm up before he is, and not just waking up when he wakes up. So and I want to get some stuff done that I talked about beforehand, right? And so like now I'm waking up an hour earlier. Like I usually was a 6 a.m.er. Now I'm a 5 a.m.er, right? The problem is I haven't really adjusted the nighttime to bump up a little bit, right? And so I'm getting less sleep. And so now I have to be even more intentional with like making sure I'm practicing good like circadian rhythm habits, but also I'm getting into a good wind down routine at night. So that's the front end of the day. The back end of the day, as you know too, it's like, I wake up, start doing things that I feel like are productive and that I want to do, and then work out, put Colby down, ends up being 7 o'clock. And now you're like, well, shit, I want some time to just for myself, right? And the next thing you know, it's freaking 10:30. You're like, oh crap, I gotta, you know what I'm saying? So on the nighttime standpoint, like I have to be on top of that as well too. Otherwise that starts to add up. And I just feel like recovery is a bit lower. And then, when we think of sleep too, another kind of thing that sleep will do is, again, it will sabotage your motivation, which in turn sabotages your willpower, right? Like if you're not aware of these things, you'll gravitate towards probably moving less and consuming more calories if you're not careful, right? And then that's going to have that vicious cycle of now you don't feel as good. And again, it's just that vicious cycle the wrong way, right? But again, what sleep will do subconsciously for a lot of people is you tend to become a little bit more snackier, and your cravings towards like tasty, high fat, high carb foods tends to go up, right? And your body just, again, craves that type of food when you're a bit sleep deprived. So if you're not careful with it, matched with today's modern environment of these types of foods, it's a recipe to have lower energy expenditure and higher energy intake, which is going to slowly tip you in that surplus over time, right? And so you just have to be careful with that there.
Which results in what people call the dad bod.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Well, then motivation's low, so now you don't want to go train.
Exactly.
You're not feeling good. You're like, that's the last thing I want to do is go train, and so yeah, it's a vicious cycle. And then people have poor ways to cope with that stress, whether it be through alcohol or drugs or any other vices out there.
Yeah. You're almost fortunate if you can just keep it to a surplus of food at that point.
Exactly. Exactly.
No, dude, I so appreciate that. The sleep aspect of it, man. I don't know. I honestly, I'm trying to remember the last time that I wasn't disrupted in my sleep. We got a 4-year-old that wakes up every single night. I don't know what it is, man. He's had nightmares and stuff, and he just always wants somebody there with him, So anyways, handle that. And then we had one of our twins had surgery a couple weeks ago, and he's still in recovery, and he's been waking up every night too. So anyways, man, needless to say, we're a little sleep deprived, and we're suffering through it. But
maybe this will be helpful for people of like, okay, if that's the case, like, again, we know that, hey, having kids like that, that's probably going to be a high likelihood of sleep is not going to be perfect, right? And so it's kind of, again, okay, what are like my thought process on it is, what are the things that I can do throughout the day? What are the things I can do to make sure that the sleep that I can get is of the highest quality, right? So for me, it's, hey, I'm going to make sure I get outside, right? I'm going to watch my light exposure at night. I'm going to cut off caffeine at a certain time. Sometimes I'm not as good at that as I should be, but I'm still going to cut it off at night. I'm going to try and get into a good wind down routine at night too, to where I get relaxed. And then from like a actual room perspective, like keeping our house, fairly chilly in the night. I use eye mask at night as well too. And then if Colby wakes up in the middle of the night, or like when he was waking up in the middle of the night, not sitting there and staring at my phone, right? And like trying to keep it as dark as possible in the house to make sure that I'm not exposing my eyes and stuff to that bright light that's going to then, make things worse. And even, creatine can be helpful under sleep deprivation as well too. Now, you don't want to use creatine for that reason, but it can be a thing that can help you in those situations.
Cool. No, those are all really good thoughts. And yeah, that, I don't know. Even from the time that we worked together, Jeff, like sleep obviously was always something that, I mean, even before kids, man, sleep was always something that I just never prioritized, and definitely could prioritize it more still to this day. But a lot of really, really good thoughts there as far as just like the nighttime routine and just different things that you can do to try and compensate, I guess, a little bit for maybe the interrupted sleep or the lack of sleep. That's one thing you kind of put me on too, is like, instead of just focusing on the hours of sleep, it's like, let's focus on the quality. Like, yes, hours are important, but also the quality of those hours is even more important, because 5 hours of quality sleep versus 7 hours of not so quality sleep, like, I don't know what that equates to, but I'm guessing 5 hours of quality sleep probably would serve you a little bit better, or maybe about the same as 7 hours of maybe not so quality sleep. So
yeah, I don't have an exact number there on that. I think it's really going to depend on how you feel, right? Like how are you specifically feeling on that? But this is one other thing too that I maybe missed on is trying to keep that consistent sleep and wake time as best as you can, right? At least the wake time, because so like, for example, last week Colby was up. He woke up at 11:30 at night, and then he was up till like 3:30 in the morning, right? And so I set my alarm at 5. I'm like, in most cases, I would have just kept it at 5, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to bump it back to 6, right? I mean, not a huge deal, still getting, 2.5 hours of sleep. But like, my thought on that is you're probably better off having that night where maybe you get less sleep, but keeping your wake time still somewhere around the same. And then so the next night, you're a bit more tired, and you can get good quality sleep, versus like in that case, not sleeping until like 10 or 11 o'clock, because then you do that. And now you start to, your circadian rhythm starts to get out of whack, there. So trying to still keep that same sleep and wake time as best as you can be helpful. Because when you start to shift that, your body's used to like whatever time you're typically at. And so you'll miss out on like deep sleep, or I'm sure you've been there. It's like, I don't know if a client's ever told you this, but it's like, it's just so weird. I slept for 12 hours, but I'm like more tired than I was. And it's like, well, yeah, because, now your circadian rhythm's all out of whack and stuff like that. So yeah.
Makes sense. Just one more little follow-up on this, man, and then we can kind of maybe wrap it up here. But I feel like a lot of times when people aren't getting to the gym, obviously it's due to lack of time, it's due to whatever, and I think one of the things too, especially with parents and new parents and just busy parents, is they don't like they prioritize sleep over exercise. And recently I was listening to a podcast. I think it was Jordan Saya and Alec Blennis were on a podcast together, and they were talking about sleep and exercise, and how there is like this balance of, there's like, Alec said this, I think he said, there's no amount of sleep that could overcome or compensate for like the certain amount of exercise. Getting in the gym and exercising, even if your sleep isn't ideal, is going to provide so much more for your overall health and well-being, both physically, mentally, and emotionally, like that sleep never could do for you. And so that's one thing I kind of wanted to emphasize, and maybe you have a little bit more insight here. is like, just because you're not getting quite as much sleep as you would like to, I would say that's not an excuse to not get in the gym and train too. Obviously, like, be mindful. I mean, sleep does play a huge role in recovery and just your ability to perform. And so we don't want to be dumb and get in the gym and hurt ourselves just because we're not getting enough sleep and stuff. But at the same time too, like, getting in, move your body, lift some weights, push yourself a little bit, like, that's going to provide more for your body and your overall well-being than maybe another hour or two of sleep could potentially provide you.
Oh yeah, dude, 100%. I mean, again, it's a balance, right? Like, there's a lot to unpack here, like, and how I would handle this, but you're 100% right. Like, eventually you can't use lack of sleep as an excuse to not work out, right? Because I do feel like now, working out is moving your body, exercising, whatever it is going to have so many benefits for your health, right? That, again, like you said, you can't just sleep your way to that. But again, to play devil's advocate on that, I'd be like, well, if sleep's not good, exercise is going to be something that's going to help set your circadian rhythm and help you get better quality sleep, right? But if that is the case, how I would package this is if someone's like, well, I'm not going to the gym because I'm not getting enough sleep. Well, to me, that's the now a sign that we need to audit your day, and we need to see how, one, can we improve your sleep quality to make sure that the small hours you can get, you can improve, which in 99.9, I would probably say 100% of the time, unless you're somebody like Brian Johnson, who is just a freak with this stuff, somebody has something that they can do to improve their sleep quality and their circadian rhythm in their day-to-day to help get better quality sleep, right? In today's environment, 100% the case. So I'd be looking there, making sure that's good, auditing your time to see if we can improve all those things. But like you said, you still need to exercise. And so I think it's a balancing, maybe for some people, they do need to, maybe instead of getting that extra workout in, they do need to prioritize a little bit more sleep. But then you also have the people that they need to probably prioritize getting some movement in over getting more sleep, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's hard to give an answer, but I agree. Like, you definitely, if you're not exercising, like, you have, like, to me, when I like sit down and talk about like protocols and strategies for like the holiday season, for just anything, dude, it's like, you have to have some sort of movement in it. Like, if health and any body composition thing is part of what we want to do, which, I mean, let's be honest, for everyone, that's, everybody should focus on their health. So again, that makes exercise to me the number one thing, that if that's not happening, you're missing out on things like that. You have to get that in.
Well, movement and exercise, I think, is going to improve your sleep quality. And I think sleep quality is going to improve your exercise. And so it's like they go hand in hand with each other. I think if you're only doing one of those, well, I mean, you can't really not sleep, but doing both of them hand in hand is only going to improve the other.
Dude, you got to exercise for sure.
So, awesome, man.
If you have time, I had a few other things too that I wanted to kind of go over.
Yeah, let's do it.
That I wanted to kind of go over. But like, another big one is like so again, being a very routine-based person, not having the perfect workout time anymore is something that I've had to kind of work on and get over, right? So like working out maybe a little bit more later in the evening. And then sometimes, depending on what we have going on, if I have to work later or we have to be somewhere or dinner's a little bit earlier than normal, being okay with having a session in later at night. I hate working out at night, but my thought is like I'm still going to get it in. And it's like, even though the time isn't necessarily perfect, like I still need to get it in. Right. So like I've had to do that a bit more than I've wanted, of working out later. But again, it's like, I will make sure I get it in. Right. Whereas like I talked to Allie and she's like, if it's past a certain time, it's like, I'm just not going to do it. So it's like, all right, I want to make sure she gets her stuff in, gets good, because like as much as I don't want to, and I definitely feel like my performance is not as good, I'm still going to get it in. I wouldn't not be able to not get it in. Now, again, this is all relative to, hey, what's my recovery been like? Have I missed a session recently? How am I feeling overall? That's going to be the deciding factor. Where like, there might be a day or two here and there where I'm like, you know what, it's probably better for me to not work out. But most of the time I'm going to find a way to get it in, even if it is not necessarily at the most perfect time there.
Well, and it's like going back to what we were saying too, right? It's like getting it in is going to be better than not getting it in. Bottom line, it's like one day of working out late at night is going to be way better than, not doing it at all. So,
well, I just see that be like a huge bottleneck for people, where it's like, oh, this gym is not open, so now I got to drive extra 2 minutes. And it's like, and it's like, you just find ways to not do it. It's like, again, it comes back to what you talked about earlier with the choice, right? It's a choice there. I guess too, is it just I think having the education of like knowing what to do allows me to be able to be a bit more effective and efficient in each session, right? Whereas like me, maybe 5-10 years ago, I don't know if I would have handled this as well, because I would be kind of stressing about like, oh no, I'm not able to get in as long of a workout or as much of volume as I've had. Now I'm going to lose all this muscle, or, hey, if I do have to, not train that day, so I think definitely that education has been like super helpful for me to be able to know education and the skill, right, that I've developed over the years of training and learning my body and things like that, has definitely helped to be able to like work through this and, just be more effective with less, essentially. Right. And I will say too, it's probably while health and fitness is still super important to me. And like I said, I'm not going to miss, and just because again, like I do ultimately love it. And, again, like I said, I base it off of how I feel, but it probably is a little bit lower on the priority list than it's been in the past, right? A little bit lower now than taking care of my family, and a little bit lower than probably work right now, right? Like those two are the big, because again, I need to provide for my family. And so unfortunately, it's like, in years past, like it'd be like, okay, I could work out at 12, I can build my pre-workout meal here, my post-workout meal here, I can have everything planned out perfectly. And now it's like, it just is a little bit lower on the priority list. And I think if you can get clear on that, I think that can be super helpful too.
I'm curious, Jeff, where would you say it's at on your priority list?
Well, like I said, it's probably, family, work to provide, and then it's probably there, right?
So still top 3.
Yeah, still top 3. Like it's still in there for sure. Just because again, like if my health is important, I also want to teach that to Colby as well too, right? Like that's why it's up there. I love it. It is a hobby and something I enjoy. And, again, like I said, my health is important. So it's like, it has to be there. And if I'm not taking care of myself and my health, I'm not going to be able to do the first 2 things as well either. So it's like, it still has to be up there,
Yeah. Yep. That's one thing I've found. If it's not in like, I don't know, I would say top 3 or 4, maybe top 5. But like once you get much past the 3, 4, or 5 spot on your priority list, dude, it's like, it's going to be really, really hard to actually make that time and that effort. So I've talked about that in the past. And so I wanted to just kind of touch on that real quick again and see, where exactly it was at on yours. And obviously top 3, I think you're still in a really good position to still make meaningful progress with your overall health and well-being. So
yeah, man. But yeah, other than that, just like, I think probably being okay with not maximizing every last little bit right now during this period of time. Again, I think it comes back to the kind of knowing what to do in less time and getting more out of things, but also just being okay with, maybe now's not the time that I'm necessarily going to maximize every last little thing, right? And that's okay. I don't need to right now, right? That's always going to be there down the line if I want to. And again, it probably comes back to the slightly lower on the priority list there. So
yeah, cool.
But yeah, dude, those were probably the main ones that I feel like are probably worth going over and stuff like that. So
awesome, man. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on again today, dude. It's always good to chat with you. And I really enjoyed talking more specifically just kind of about, being a dad and stuff. That's, like I said, that's kind of what I'm trying to do right now is speak more to the fathers and the husbands and stuff that maybe are struggling with this and really try to help them develop the mindset necessary in order to be the best version of themselves. Because I don't think you can really argue it. The healthier you are, the better you're going to be for yourself, for your family, and for, other people that you interact with on a daily basis. And so, appreciate you again, man. And I'm sure we'll have you back on in the future. I always love having you on, dude, and chatting more. So, anything, I'm just curious of anything that you've got going right now, or anything you want to point anybody that listening to that they could maybe learn from and learn more about you.
Yeah. So nothing new coming out or anything. I would say the biggest thing,
still putting out 3 podcasts a week. Yep.
Still putting out 3. I've definitely gone back and forth on like, hey, should I drop down to 2? But right now I like doing the 2 solo and a guest right now. But yeah, I have my podcast, the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Like Luke said, 3 episodes a week. I just love talking about fitness content and stuff around that. So it's like, it's just something I enjoy. So it's easy to do. And then Instagram, Jeff, HOEHN_. That's where I'm like most active on social. So if you have any questions, and that's where I just post the most stuff and everything like that, the most day to day and everything like that. So that's it, man. Those would be the places, and yeah, nothing new outside of that. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well, guys, if you aren't following Jeff on Instagram, or if you haven't listened to Mind Muscle Connection, be sure to do that. I think I've said this before, but if not, I want to make it absolutely clear that Jeff, I think, is one of the best coaches that I've ever interacted with, especially through the social media realm. I thoroughly enjoyed like our year plus of time working together, man. And I still reflect on it all the time and pull a lot of little nuggets from our time working together. So if anybody's interested, check out his channel, his socials, and learn from him there, because every time you post, dude, there's something valuable for the audience to take from. So
thank you, man. I appreciate that. And yep, dude, it was awesome working with you and everything too. And yeah, man, I love coming on here and chat with you about all this stuff. So yep, appreciate the work you do as well too, man.
I appreciate you. All right, guys, until next time, go out and get after it and have a good day.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Thanks, man.